Rain fell hard that morning, washing over the courthouse steps, like the world itself was trying to cleanse to something heavy. Reporters huddled under umbrellas, cameras waiting for a glimpse of the child everyone called the silent witness. 8 years old, pale, fragile, eyes too old for her small face. She hadn't spoken since the night of the fire, the night her world ended. When she stepped into the courtroom, hand in hand with Detective Sam, everyone fell quiet. Beside her walked Rex, a German shepherd whose calm eyes missed nothing, trained to protect, to obey. But what he did that day, no one could have predicted. As the judge leaned forward to pet him, trying to break the tension, Rex's body froze. The soft hum of lights flickered overhead. Then came the growl, low, deep, primal. Everyone thought he was losing control, but what no one knew was that Growl would save a life before the day was done. Thunder rolled over the city like a warning. Rain fell in cold sheets, drumming against the courthouse steps, washing the world in shades of gray. A police car pulled up, its headlights slicing through the storm. The wipers swayed rhythmically, fighting the downpour. Inside, Detective Sam sat behind the wheel, his jaw tight, eyes tired. In the rear seat, an 8-year-old girl stared blankly out the window, clutching a torn plush dog to her chest. Beside her, a German shepherd sat perfectly still, strong, alert, every muscle coiled in quiet discipline. The little girl didn't look at him. Her small fingers traced the worn fabric of the toy as if it were the last thread connecting her to something safe. She hadn't spoken a single word since that night. The night sirens screamed and fire painted the sky. Her silence had become her shield. Sam glanced back through the rearview mirror, his voice low but gentle. "We're here, kiddo. Just a few questions inside, all right?" She didn't answer. Only the faint rustle of the plush dog replied, its seams damp with rain and tears. Sam exhaled softly, then looked at the dog beside her. "Stay close, Rex," he muttered. The door opened to a rush of wind and rain. Sam held an umbrella over the child as they hurried toward the courthouse entrance. The fluorescent light above the doorway flickered, buzzing like a trapped fly. Inside, the air felt too clean, too sterile, a world of white walls and polished floors, where echoes carried long after words stopped. In the waiting room, the girl sat in silence again. The fluorescent hum was the only sound, steady and lifeless. She sat on the edge of a chair, her small legs swinging above the floor, eyes lost in a blank stare. The torn plush dog rested in her lap. Her hair clung to her cheeks, still damp from the storm. Rex stood nearby, motionless yet alive. His head slightly tilted, ears turning toward every sound. A dripping ceiling vent, the shuffle of shoes down the hallway, the faint tremor in the girl's breath. His dark eyes scanned, calculating, protective. To others, he was a trained police dog, obedient, precise, programmed. But beneath the discipline was something far more human: instinct, empathy. Sam knelt beside the girl. He spoke softly, his tone filled with patience, the kind that only comes from grief. "He's just here to protect you, sweetheart." His smile was tired but kind. The girl's eyes flickered briefly toward Rex, then fell away again. Rex didn't move. His training told him to wait, to measure every heartbeat before acting. Yet he could feel the girl's fear, sharp and invisible, like the electricity that fills the air before lightning strikes. She was too still, too small. The scent of fear was unmistakable. Adrenaline, salt, something fragile. He lowered his head slightly, nose twitching, watching her with quiet intensity. Minutes passed like hours. Rain tapped softly against the windows, blurring the view outside. Somewhere down the hallway, a gavel struck wood. The sound echoed faintly, a reminder of the storm inside this building, the storm of truth and judgment. The girl's fingers trembled. She glanced at Rex again. His chest rose and fell in steady rhythm, a living heartbeat of calm. Slowly, as if drawn by something she didn't understand, she reached out her hand. Her small palm hovered in the air, half courage, half hesitation. Sam held his breath, watching, but not interfering. Rex's eyes met hers. He didn't flinch, didn't move forward. For a long second, their world narrowed to that fragile space between them, a trembling hand and a patient soul. Then, with quiet grace, Rex lowered his head. His fur brushed against her fingertips. Warm, real. The girl froze, eyes wide, then pressed her hand more firmly into his fur. The texture surprised her. It wasn't just soft. It was steady, grounding. For the first time in weeks, something solid pushed back against the fog inside her chest. She exhaled shakily, the faintest sound of life escaping her lips. Rex stayed still, letting her explore the rhythm of his breathing. His tail moved once, slow and subtle, a silent acknowledgement. The little girl's eyes filled with tears, though she didn't understand why. Maybe it was the warmth. Maybe it was the first time she didn't feel alone. Sam looked away, his throat tightening. "Good boy," he whispered. He knew better than to interrupt the fragile miracle unfolding before him. A minute passed, then another. The rain outside softened, turning into a light drizzle that painted the windows in silver streaks. The courthouse seemed to exhale, as if it too had been holding its breath. The tension in the air thinned. Even the buzzing lights seemed quieter now. The girl's hand still rested on Rex's head. She studied him. The dark muzzle, the quiet eyes that didn't judge or demand. She had seen too many faces filled with pity. His was different. It held understanding without words, trust without promises. It was as if he could hear the thoughts she couldn't speak. Sam finally stood and checked his watch. "They'll call us soon," he said softly. "You both ready?" The girl didn't reply, but her hand stayed where it was, and that was enough. Rex shifted slightly, positioning himself between her and the door, a silent vow, the kind that didn't need to be spoken. He glanced once toward the hallway, then back at the girl, as if assuring himself that nothing would harm her while he was there. Outside, thunder murmured one last time, distant and weary. The storm was passing, but the real trial had yet to begin. For a moment, everything was still. The child and the dog sat in silence, two beings bound by something deeper than words, both scarred, both survivors. Yet in the quiet of that sterile waiting room, beneath the hum of tired lights, a small miracle took root. The girl blinked slowly, her gaze meeting his once more. In Rex's eyes, she saw something she hadn't seen since her parents were alive: safety. In her silence, he saw something he recognized too well: pain. Neither moved. They didn't need to. The connection had been made, a promise silent but unbreakable. The faint sound of footsteps echoed down the hall. Sam returned to the doorway, nodding to the bailiff who appeared behind him. "It's time," he said quietly. Rex stood, his gaze never leaving the girl. She hesitated, clutching her toy once more. Then she looked down at him. He met her eyes, calm and steady. The storm outside faded into silence. Side by side, they walked toward the courtroom doors, into the light, into the unknown, but no longer alone. Morning light seeped through the tall courthouse windows, pale and unforgiving. It spilled across rows of wooden benches, catching the thin dust in the air. Reporters shuffled in whispering clusters, the quick clicks of camera shutters breaking the hush. The smell of coffee, wet coats, and tension filled the room. Somewhere behind the chatter, the faint echo of rain still tapped against the roof, as if the storm refused to leave. Detective Sam guided the little girl through the aisle. Her shoes made no sound on the marble floor. She moved like a ghost in daylight. One hand held her worn plush dog. The other hung by her side, pale against her dark dress. Rex padded silently beside them, his nails clicking in measured rhythm, gaze scanning every corner. The doors, the shadows, the tremor of movement behind the jury box. He didn't miss anything. At the front, the judge, a man in his 60s, kind eyes buried behind heavy glasses, adjusted his robe and cleared his throat. His voice carried a softness that didn't quite match the severity of the room. "Court is now in session." His tone tried to sound routine, but even he felt the weight of the day. Everyone knew this case was different. The victim too young, the details too dark. The girl was led to a small chair beside the witness stand. It was too big for her. Her feet dangled inches above the floor. Sam placed a gentle hand on her shoulder before stepping back. "You'll be all right," he whispered. "Rex and I are right here." She gave no sign she heard him, but her fingers tightened around the stuffed toy. Rex sat near her, next to his handler's chair. To the court officers, he was simply part of procedure, an emotional support measure, a tool, a canine asset on duty, on some. They spoke about him the way they might about a piece of equipment, reliable, silent, predictable. But to Rex, the world unfolded in ways no human could understand. Every heartbeat in the room was a sound, the nervous tapping of a juror's shoe, the sharp scent of ink and leather, the static hum of lights overhead. Beneath it all, the faint vibration of the building itself. Old wires, tired wood, electricity humming through walls. To him, it was a living map, every frequency painting a shape in the air. His gaze swept the room again. The defense attorney whispered to his client. A reporter coughed. Someone dropped a pen. Rex's ears twitched. He noted it all, calm but alert. The judge looked toward the child and tried to soften the air. "Sweetheart," he said kindly, "you don't have to be afraid. You're very brave to be here." The girl looked up briefly. Her lips parted, but no sound came. The bailiff frowned. The silence felt heavy. Sam gave a small nod to the judge, quietly reminding him she hadn't spoken since the incident. The judge sighed and shuffled his papers. "We'll take it slow." His voice was gentler now. While questions passed between lawyers and witnesses, Rex stayed still, breathing steady. Yet something in the air made him uneasy. A low buzz, just under the range of human hearing, prickled his senses. He turned his head slightly, eyes narrowing toward the ceiling. A faint tremor ran through the wooden floor, too subtle for human feet. The fluorescent lights above flickered once. No one noticed except him. A quiet rumble built low in his throat, barely audible, more vibration than sound. The girl's small hand tightened on the stuffed dog, eyes darting toward him. Sam glanced down. "Easy, boy," he murmured. But Rex's ears stayed locked upward, his body tense. Something wasn't right. Across the courtroom, a few people exchanged nervous glances. "Is the dog okay?" one reporter whispered. The judge smiled faintly, trying to ease the tension. "He's fine, I'm sure," he said. "Long day for everyone." The laughter that followed was small and strained, the kind that dies before it reaches the walls. Rex didn't laugh. His mind worked differently. Instinct layered over memory, memory over duty. The noise that had stirred him came again, a faint hum behind the walls. His handler noticed the shift in posture, the fur along his back, the shortened breath. "Rex," Sam whispered, a warning mixed with trust. The dog didn't move, didn't bark. Only that faint growl lingered, a tremor of warning he couldn't explain in human words. The girl watched him with wide, uncertain eyes. For a moment, her fear of the courtroom faded, replaced by curiosity. She leaned forward slightly, as if seeking comfort in the same creature who now seemed uneasy himself. The judge leaned back in his chair. "Let's take a short recess," he suggested kindly. "Maybe our young lady could use a moment to breathe." His voice carried the tired kindness of a man who'd seen too much sadness and never grown used to it. During the pause, Sam crouched beside Rex, his whisper low. "You're picking something up, huh?" His tone wasn't scolding. It was respect. He'd learned long ago when Rex reacted, there was a reason. He gave the leash a light tug. "Stay alert, but easy." Rex blinked slowly, obedient, though his gaze stayed fixed on the ceiling vents where the faint hum persisted. The bailiff announced, "Court back in session." The sound of chairs scraping echoed like thunder. People settled, papers rustled, whispers faded. The judge smiled toward the girl, trying once more to lighten the heaviness pressing on everyone. He rose slightly from his chair, walked around the bench, and approached the child. His expression softened. "You know," he said kindly, "I used to have a dog when I was your age. A big, stubborn thing. Never listened to anyone." A small chuckle rippled through the room. "I bet he looked a bit like this handsome fellow here." He gestured toward Rex. Rex tilted his head, watching. The judge crouched carefully, slow, deliberate, the way one greets a friend's pet. "He's a good boy, isn't he?" He extended a hand. Sam opened his mouth to caution, but the judge smiled wider, hoping to warm the room with kindness. "See?" he said to the girl. "Nothing to be afraid of." Rex didn't move at first. The hum in the walls grew louder, a pulse beneath the floorboards. His gaze flicked to the child, then back to the judge's hand. A ripple of unease moved through his muscles, ears pinned slightly back. The girl's breath caught. She could feel the shift, the tension she couldn't name. The room fell quiet again, waiting. Rex's chest tightened. His senses screamed, unseen signals, the faintest metallic scent, a vibration, something unnatural. He exhaled sharply, a low warning that vibrated the air. The judge froze, hand inches from the dog's head. For a long second, no one moved. The laughter died, replaced by confusion. "What's wrong?" someone whispered. Sam's eyes narrowed, instincts kicking in. Rex's gaze shifted to the girl's seat, to the ground beneath it, back to the judge's hand. His tail stiffened. The growl deepened, soft but unmistakable. The courtroom held its breath. And in that silence, just before the moment would change everything, the judge, still smiling, murmured softly, "It's all right, boy. I'm not going to hurt anyone." He didn't know how wrong he was. The judge's hand hovered in the air, inches from Rex's head. The room felt still, wrapped in fragile calm. For a fleeting second, it seemed like a simple, human moment, an old man offering kindness, a loyal dog receiving it. A small ripple of warmth passed through the courtroom, easing the tightness in everyone's chests. The air shifted from tension to something almost gentle. But then, Rex's body stiffened. The change was instantaneous, almost imperceptible. His ears twitched forward. The fur along his spine rose like a silent wave. His pupils dilated, dark, sharp. And then, from deep inside his chest, came a sound that silenced the world. A low, guttural growl. It wasn't loud, but it carried power. Ancient, primal, alive. It rolled through the quiet courtroom like thunder under glass. The judge froze, hand suspended midair. The small smile on his face faltered. The warmth vanished. The silence that followed was unbearable. Every head turned, every breath caught. For one heartbeat, no one moved. Then, chaos cracked open. "Whoa! What's happening?" one lawyer whispered, half rising. "Control that animal!" someone shouted from the back. The bailiff stepped forward, hand on his baton. Reporters leaned in, cameras ready, capturing what looked like a breakdown of order. But Rex didn't lunge. He didn't move at all. His body was stone, every muscle locked, every instinct humming. His eyes stayed fixed, not on the judge, not on Sam, but on something else, something no one else could see. His gaze was locked on the girl. She sat frozen, eyes wide, her small hand gripping the plush dog so tightly the stitches strained. Her lower lip trembled, tears welled, but didn't fall. She couldn't look away. The deep growl vibrated in her bones, yet somewhere deep inside, she didn't feel fear. She felt warning. Rex's nostrils flared. There was a faint metallic scent, sharp, unnatural. His ears twitched toward the ground. The subtle crackle below the girl's feet. He could hear it. The sound of danger that had no words. "Rex!" Sam's voice cut through the noise, firm, controlled. "Easy, down, boy." He moved quickly, steadying the leash. His eyes darted from the judge to the girl to the floor. Something wasn't right. He could feel it, too. The judge stepped back, robes brushing the stand. "What's wrong with him?" His voice, startled but calm enough to mask it. "He's not aggressive, is he?" Sam shook his head. "No, sir. He's never like this." "Then what?" Rex's growl deepened, a low rumble, carrying warning, not anger. His head turned slightly, eyes locked downward. The hum beneath the floor wasn't just noise anymore. It was energy, alive, angry. The courtroom's calm collapsed completely. Lawyers stood, reporters shouted, chairs scraped, orders barked. Chaos spread like fire through dry grass. But through it all, Rex stood unmoving, instincts overriding training. The leash in Sam's hand pulled tight. "Rex, no." He didn't respond. His training told him to obey. His nature told him to stay. His job wasn't to please. His job was to protect. The girl's eyes flicked, from the judge to Rex, then to the floor beneath her. Her chest tightened, breathing quickened. A faint sound near her feet, a tiny pop, like static between fingers. She looked down, confused. Rex growled again, louder this time. The sound filled the room, commanding attention. The bailiff rushed forward, hand outstretched, but Sam's shout cut through the panic. Don't touch him!" The command froze everyone. Sam's voice dropped low, urgent. "He's not attacking. He's warning us." The room hushed. Only the rain dared to move, tapping softly against the windows. The judge stood frozen by the bench, disbelief clouding his eyes. "Warning us? From what?" Rex's body trembled, not from fear, but focus. His tail rigid, breath sharp, every sound in the room layered, the clock's tick, shuffling feet, and that faint, unseen hum. Then, a flicker. The overhead lights dimmed, just enough for everyone to notice. The girl gasped softly. The fluorescent bulbs buzzed back to life, but the moment had changed everything. Sam's instincts caught up to what Rex already knew. He looked toward the base of the witness stand. A faint shimmer glinted near the metal footrest. His pulse quickened. "Everyone back," he ordered. "Now, move away from the witness stand." No one moved. The judge frowned, uncertain. "Detective, what is—" "Move!" Sam barked. "Now!" Rex barked once, sharp, powerful, a crack through the air that left no room for doubt. The courtroom erupted. The judge stumbled back. The bailiff reached for the girl. But Rex was faster. He lunged forward, not to attack, but to block, positioning himself between her and the floor. For an instant, time froze. Everyone stared. The dog's teeth bared, the girl behind him, the judge pale. The moment hung, sharp as a blade. Then silence. Only the hum remained, low, dangerous. Rex's body trembled again, eyes locked on the ground beneath the girl. He turned slightly toward Sam, a look not of panic, but command. "Listen to me." Sam's hand hovered near his sidearm, not from fear, but instinct. He didn't know what the dog sensed, but he trusted it. "Everybody stay back," he said softly. "Don't touch the stand." Rex's ears flicked once more. A faint spark of blue light glowed beneath the bench, too quick to be sure, but enough. The growl dropped to a hum, steady, controlled. "Good boy," Sam whispered. "Hold it. Hold it." The courtroom, once loud, fell utterly silent. People barely breathed. Even the judge stood still, kindness replaced by awe. The girl clutched her toy, staring at Rex's back, the shield between her and the unknown. Her lips moved soundlessly. Then, a single tear rolled down her cheek. Rex didn't look at her, but he knew. He always knew the storm outside began to rise again. Thunder rumbling faintly in the distance. Inside the courtroom, another storm waited, one that no one yet understood. And as Rex's growl lingered, low, primal, it carried a message older than words themselves. Danger is near. Stay still. Trust me. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The room was locked in stillness, the kind of silence that comes before something breaks. The sound of Rex's growl filled every inch of the courtroom, low and unrelenting, like the earth itself was warning them. The judge's hand hovered midair. Sam's breath came shallow and fast. The little girl sat frozen, clutching her stuffed dog, her eyes darting between Rex and the floor beneath her. Every soul in that room felt it, the vibration, faint and invisible, humming beneath the wood. And then, it happened. A spark. Small. Harmless at first. Like the crack of static between fingers, it popped under the bench near the girl's feet. Quick, sharp, fleeting. A few people blinked, uncertain if they had really seen it. Then came the hiss, a faint sizzle, the sound of something alive, feeding on air. Rex barked, once, loud, sharp, the sound of command, not fear. The world exploded into motion. The first burst of blue light flashed from beneath the floorboards. It crawled like lightning across the polished wood, leaping in jagged lines. The girl gasped, her body jerking backward. Sam moved before thinking, shouting, "Get her out!" The bailiff lunged forward, grabbing her by the arm, just as a surge of current tore upward from the base of the witness stand. The crack was deafening, the air filled with the smell of ozone and burnt varnish. Blue arcs danced like angry spirits, snapping at anything close. The judge stumbled backward, robes whipping around his legs. Reporters screamed. Cameras clattered to the floor. The entire courtroom dissolved into chaos. But in the center of it all, Rex didn't run. He moved toward the danger. His instincts took over. His body was a blur, muscles coiled and released in perfect motion. He darted between the girl and the sparking wood, placing himself in front of her, a living shield. Sam yelled after him, "Rex, no!" But the command was useless now. This wasn't training. This was life and death. The dog's paws skidded on the slick floor. The light flickered again, a violent strobe painting the room in blue and white. The crackle of electricity grew louder, crawling up the metal frames, climbing toward the ceiling. Someone screamed for help. Someone else called for power to be cut. Sam reached the girl at the same moment Rex did. He snatched her by the shoulders, dragging her clear of the stand. Just as sparks burst upward, tearing through the wood. The sound was deafening, a high-pitched whine followed by a hard snap. The floor glowed briefly, then split in a small, angry flame. The moment stretched, one long second that felt eternal, and then silence. Just the faint crackle of dying current, the scent of burnt wood, the smoke curling lazily toward the ceiling. Everyone froze in disbelief. The room that moments ago buzzed with noise and judgment now stood completely still. The lights flickered once more, then steadied. A gray haze drifted across the floor, thick enough to sting the eyes. The judge clutched the edge of his desk, breathing hard. His voice trembled when he finally spoke. Is she all right? Sam nodded, pulling the girl close. She's fine. His voice broke halfway through the word. She's fine, sir. He turned his gaze to Rex. The German shepherd stood near the scorch mark, chest rising and falling fast. His ears were still forward, every nerve alive. The glow from the damaged wood reflected in his dark eyes, the eyes of a creature who understood danger better than any human could. Rex didn't bark again. He didn't need to. His job was done. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the judge, still shaking, sank back into his chair. His glasses slipped down his nose as he whispered, "He knew, before any of us." The words hung in the air, echoing softly. Reporters who had moments ago been whispering about chaos now stood in reverent silence. Even the bailiff, still gripping his baton, looked at Rex as though seeing him for the first time, not as a tool but as something else entirely. The little girl turned in Sam's arms. Her small body trembled from shock, but her eyes never left Rex. Slowly, she took a step forward, toward the dog who had stood between her and death. The smoke swirled faintly around them, gray ribbons in the filtered light. She knelt. Rex's head lowered instinctively, ears relaxed now, breathing steady. They faced each other in that quiet aftermath, child and protector, both changed by the same storm. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it carried through the silence like a prayer. Good boy. It was the first sound she had made in months. Sam froze, eyes wide. The judge's mouth fell open. One of the officers wiped at his face, pretending it was sweat. The simple phrase, the smallest collection of words, felt like a miracle reborn in that cold, gray room. Rex tilted his head, a faint whine escaping his throat. He stepped closer, paw brushing the girl's shoe. She reached out, resting her tiny hand on his muzzle. The air shifted, no longer thick with fear, but heavy with something else. Gratitude. Peace. The judge rose again, removing his glasses and rubbing his eyes. Good boy, he echoed softly, his voice breaking. Good boy. Indeed. No one applauded. No one spoke. They just watched. The old man with tears in his ashy eyes, the detectives, the reporters, the bailiff, all silently acknowledging what had just happened. Words would have only cheapened it. Rex exhaled slowly, tension melting from his body. He sat beside the girl, steady and calm. His paw shifted forward until it touched the edge of her foot. She didn't move it away. The faintest smile curved her lips. Outside, the storm had finally stopped. Sunlight slipped through the high windows, cutting through the lingering smoke. Dust particles glittered like stars in the beam of light that fell upon them. Sam looked at the two of them, this unlikely pair bound by fear, courage, and something unspoken. A lump rose in his throat. He reached down, stroking Rex's back. You saved her, buddy, he murmured. You really saved her. Rex blinked once, breathing calm, as if the world had returned to its rightful rhythm. His gaze drifted toward the girl, her small face half hidden behind the plush toy. For the first time since he had entered the courtroom, her expression wasn't blank. It was alive. The faint smell of burned wood lingered like memory, but over it came something cleaner. The scent of rain drying outside, of fresh air sneaking through open doors. The courthouse, a place built for judgment, had just witnessed grace. The judge finally found his voice again. "Let's adjourn for the day," he said softly. "We've seen enough for one morning." As people began to move again, quietly, reverently, Rex stayed beside the girl, his paw against her foot, his eyes half closed. The light from the window stretched across them both, protector and protected, bound not by words or law, but by something deeper. And in that gentle silence, after all the thunder and fear, the world seemed to breathe again. The hospital corridor was a tunnel of pale light and distant echoes. Machines hummed softly behind half-closed doors. Nurses spoke in gentle voices that never reached full volume. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and rain, a reminder that the world outside still existed, even after everything that had happened inside that courtroom. Room 214. That's where they had moved her. The girl everyone now called the lucky survivor. But luck, as Detective Sam knew too well, was a cruel word. It always carried a shadow. He stood outside her door for a long time before going in. In his left hand, he held a small paper bag, a bottle of water, a chocolate bar, something to make the moment less heavy. In his right, he held the leash. Rex stood quietly beside him, ears forward, gaze steady. The dog's fur still carried the faint scent of smoke from the courthouse. He had been bathed, fed, praised by every officer in the building. But now, waiting in the sterile hallway, his eyes told a different story. Alert, searching, protective. Sam took a slow breath and pushed open the door. The girl lay small and pale against the wide, white bed. Her hair was tangled around the pillow, a halo of night. The plush dog sat on her lap, one ear torn, the stitching repaired with hospital tape. Her hands rested on it gently, as though afraid it might vanish if she let go. A nurse looked up and smiled softly. "She's awake," she whispered. "No words yet, but she seems calm." Sam nodded, murmured his thanks, and stepped inside. The nurse slipped out quietly, closing the door behind her. The room fell silent, except for the rhythm of the heart monitor. A soft beep, beep, beep. The sound of life continuing, whether she wanted it to or not. "Hey, kiddo," Sam said quietly. "Brought someone who's been missing you." He gave the leash a small release. Rex padded forward, nails clicking softly against the floor. The girl's eyes flickered toward the sound. Her lips parted, but no sound came. For a long second, she just stared at the dog who had saved her, the one who had stood between her and death. Rex tilted his head slightly, studying her face, reading her heartbeat the way only he could. Then, without hesitation, he jumped lightly onto the bed. The mattress dipped under his weight. The girl gasped, not in fear, but surprise. Her hands moved instinctively to steady him, small palms pressing against his warm fur. Her expression changed. For the first time since the night of the fire, her eyes lit up, faintly at first, then brighter, like dawn after too long in darkness. Her breath hitched. A soft sound escaped her chest. Not quite a laugh, but something close. Rex settled beside her, curling his body protectively against her side. His head rested on her lap, eyes half closed. She stroked his ear, gently, almost shyly, as if afraid he might disappear if she blinked. Sam watched from the foot of the bed, his throat tightening. "Told you he missed you," he said softly. No response, but her hand never stopped moving, up and down the dog's fur, slow and steady, like a heartbeat she could feel with her fingers. For a moment, peace seemed possible, but then her eyes clouded, her hand stopped. Time touched 500s, and without warning, her body trembled. A silent sob shook through her small frame. The tears came in bursts she couldn't control. She clutched Rex's collar with both hands, burying her face into his neck. No sound came, just the raw physical shaking of someone remembering too much. Sam didn't speak. He couldn't. He had seen this before. The breaking point that follows survival. It wasn't fear anymore. It was memory. Darkness. The smell of smoke. A woman's voice screaming her name. The red glow of fire through the window. Sirens. Hands pulling her from the car. A man shouting, "We've got one alive!" Then, silence. No parents, no warmth, just flashing blue lights, and a stranger's jacket around her shoulders. Back in the hospital room, she pressed her face deeper into Rex's fur. Her tears dampened his coat, but he didn't move. He stayed perfectly still, letting her hold him as tightly as she needed. His breathing stayed calm and rhythmic, a steady anchor in her storm. Sam sat by the window. Outside, the city moved on. Cars, people, life. Inside, time slowed. He rubbed a hand over his face. "You know," he said softly, "everyone keeps calling her lucky." He shook his head. "They have no idea what that word costs." Rex lifted his eyes at the sound of his voice. Their gaze met, man and dog, partners who had seen too much of both cruelty and grace. Sam smiled faintly. "You always know when to step in, don't you? Like you can hear the things people can't say." He looked at the girl again, her fingers clutching Rex's collar tag. The metal glinted faintly under the hospital light. The name etched there read simply, "Rex, Unit K917." Sam's voice dropped lower, softer. "He doesn't just protect people," he said. "He heals them." The girl didn't look up, but her grip loosened slightly. The tears slowed. Her breathing steadied. She raised her head at last, eyes red but calm. She studied Rex's face, the faint gray at his muzzle, the quiet intelligence in his eyes. Slowly, she leaned forward and kissed the top of his head. No words, just a gesture, small, yet carrying more meaning than 1,000 thanks. Rex closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. For the first time, he let out a small sigh, a sound of deep peace. His tail tapped once against the blanket, barely audible, but enough. Sam stood quietly, hands in his pockets. The light outside the window had changed, clouds parting, letting in thin streaks of gold. It bathed the room in warmth, the kind of light that feels like forgiveness. And for the first time since that terrible night, she slept without nightmares. Night settled quietly over the hospital. The corridors dimmed, one light at a time, until only the soft glow of monitors and exit signs remained. The world outside was still damp from rain, its sound muted against the window glass. Inside, the room where the little girl slept was calm, filled with the rhythm of breathing, the whisper of machines, the faint hum of air conditioning. Rex lay at the foot of her bed, his head resting on his paws. His eyes were half closed, but he wasn't asleep. Dogs rarely sleep deeply when they guard something they love. His ears twitched at every sound, the shuffle of a nurse's shoes, the distant rumble of an elevator, the drip of rainwater from the roof. Yet underneath all of it was a deeper quiet, the kind that comes only when danger has passed, at least for now. He lifted his head slightly, gazing at the girl. Her face was turned toward the window, bathed in silver moonlight. Her small hand dangled over the blanket, fingers loose, open. Her breathing was slow and even, peaceful in a way that felt fragile, like glass. Rex watched her for a long moment. Then his eyes softened. Something inside him, something he couldn't name but always carried, shifted. Memories rose. They didn't come as words, but as images, smells, sounds. The world the way he remembered it, through instinct, motion, and the pulse of life. A different light, a man's voice, a field at dawn. Good boy, Rex, stay low. His tail flicked unconsciously at the memory of that voice. Warm, steady, confident, his partner's voice. The one who had taught him everything. How to track, how to wait, how to trust. The man's scent had been familiar as home. Leather gloves, gunpowder, sweat, and coffee. They had trained together, worked together, lived in the same rhythm, one heartbeat following the other. Then the sound shifted. The memory changed. He saw the flash of red and blue lights, the echo of gunfire, the smell of dirt and blood. His body tensed. His ears filled with the screams of humans, the chaos of a mission gone wrong. He remembered the command shouted through static, "Stay back!" and how he hadn't listened. He had run forward into the smoke, his nose filled with the scent of his partner. The world had been fire and thunder. He had found him on the ground, the man who had always stood tall, now still, too still. Rex had nudged his shoulder, whined, pawed at his chest, but no breath came. They had pulled him away, hands gripping his collar, dragging him from the body. He had barked until his voice broke, until the sound became nothing but air. He had fought them, not understanding why they were taking him away from the only person he trusted. Then, silence. Weeks in a kennel that smelled of metal and loneliness. Humans came and went, speaking words that meant nothing. Retired. Transfer. K9 trauma. He learned to stop looking at the door. Trust had died with his partner that day. The world became commands and duty, no longer connection. He followed orders, yes, but something inside him stayed locked away. A wall built from instinct and grief. Until her, the little girl. The first time he saw her, she had been smaller than the duffel bag he carried on patrols. She had sat in the corner of the waiting room, eyes empty, silent, holding that torn plush toy. She hadn't smelled of fear exactly, more like sadness, salt, and rain, the kind of scent that spoke of loss, the same kind he carried in his fur. When she reached out her trembling hand toward him that first day, something inside him broke open. The wall cracked. Her fear didn't push him away. It mirrored his own. He had seen that same look before, long ago, in the mirror of his partner's eyes, right before the light left them. Don't leave me. Now, in the quiet hospital room, he remembered it all. He shifted closer to her, resting his chin gently on the blanket near her arm. Her skin was warm, the faint scent of soap and saline mixing in the air. His breathing slowed to match hers. The rhythmic pulse of her heart filled his ears. Steady, human, fragile, alive. He closed his eyes, and the images overlapped. His partner's heartbeat. Her heartbeat. The two memories blending like watercolors on wet paper, one fading, one returning. The girl stirred in her sleep. A faint sound escaped her lips. A whimper. The ghost of a nightmare. Rex lifted his head, alert again. Her hand twitched, searching the air. Without hesitation, he nudged her fingers with his nose. The contact was small, but immediate. Her hand found his fur and clenched softly. The tension in her body eased. Rex stayed like that, letting her hold on. He didn't move, didn't breathe too loud. Just existed. A steady, warm presence in a world that had taken too much from both of them. Minutes passed. The moonlight shifted. A nurse peeked in, smiled faintly at the sight, and quietly backed out. The door clicked shut, leaving them in that small cocoon of silence and safety. Rex watched the girl's face relax, her lashes trembling once before she drifted deeper into sleep. He lowered his head again, this time resting it gently against her chest, right above her heart. The sound filled his ears. Thump, thump, thump. Each beat steady, sure. The sound of life that had survived what should have destroyed it. Somewhere in the deep quiet, the smallest sound filled the air. Not words, not even a sigh, but the fragile breath of comfort returning to two hearts that had forgotten how to rest. Rex's tail moved once, a small flick against the blanket. He had found his purpose again. Not through commands, not through duty, but through the heartbeat of a child who had lost everything and given him back what he thought was gone forever. 3 weeks had passed since the courtroom fire, and the story that had captured every newspaper headline. Reporters called her the silent witness. Others called her the girl saved by a dog. But inside the courthouse today, she was simply herself, an 8-year-old child about to face her fears once more. Outside, the sky was clear. The city had shaken off the rain. Morning sunlight filtered through the tall courthouse windows, washing the walls in gentle gold. Yet even in the warmth, there was a chill, the kind that came from memory. Detective Sam stood near the entrance, adjusting his tie for the 5th time. He wasn't nervous for himself. He was nervous for her. "You ready, kiddo?" he asked softly. The girl nodded, her small hand held tightly onto Rex's leash. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair tied neatly by one of the nurses who had cared for her. She looked stronger now, the hollowness in her eyes replaced by quiet determination. Rex walked calmly at her side, head level, eyes sharp. His badge still glinted from his collar, polished that morning by Sam. The dog's presence drew murmurs from the hallway crowd. Cameras clicked, pens scribbled. But inside that moment between her and Rex, there was only calm. Sam knelt down. "He'll be right beside you, just like before," he said. "You're not alone, okay?" The girl looked at him, then down at Rex. The dog's tail moved once, slow and sure. She nodded again, clutching the leash tighter. "Okay," she whispered. It was the first time he had heard her voice, outside the hospital. Sam smiled softly. That's my girl. The bailiff opened the door. Court in session. The courtroom was smaller this time, quieter. The crowd had thinned. Even the judge seemed gentler, his face lined with concern instead of authority. He gave a small nod as the girl entered, flanked by Sam and Rex. Every sound felt amplified. The creak of the wooden floor, the shuffle of paper, the soft jingle of Rex's collar. People turned to watch. Some smiled. Some whispered prayers. The judge cleared his throat. "Welcome back, young lady," he said kindly. "I'm very glad to see you again." She stood near the witness stand, her legs trembling slightly, but her back straight. Sam leaned close. "You can sit if you want," he murmured. She shook her head. She wanted to stand. She wanted to be brave. Rex sat beside her chair, front paws aligned, posture perfect. His presence filled the space like gravity, calm, steady, protective. His eyes flicked to every movement, reading the room the way only he could. The defense lawyer adjusted his glasses and approached gently. "You don't have to be afraid," he said softly. "Just tell us what you remember about that night, in your own words." Her lips parted. For a long moment, no sound came. The silence stretched thin. A reporter's pen froze mid-scribble. Even the judge leaned forward. Then, she took a breath. Her voice came out small, trembling, like a candle fighting wind. "It was dark," she began. "Times." A ripple of relief passed through the courtroom, the sound of her voice breaking weeks of silence. She paused, glancing down. Rex tilted his head slightly, his eyes finding hers. It was subtle, but enough. She exhaled and continued. "The lights went out," she said. "I was with my mom and dad. We were driving home, then there was a crash." Her fingers tightened on the wooden stand. "The car, it turned over. I couldn't move. I heard my mom screaming. My dad—" Her voice faltered. She swallowed hard. Rex's ear twitched. He shifted closer, pressing his shoulder to her leg. The touch grounded her. She looked down briefly, then found the courage to go on. "They stopped screaming," she whispered. "The police came. There were lights, red and blue. I remember hands pulling me out. I remember the smell of smoke." The courtroom was silent. The words weren't loud, but they carried weight. The kind of truth that doesn't need volume to be heard. The defense attorney nodded, eyes gentle. "And that was the last time you saw them?" The girl nodded slowly. "Yes." Her voice cracked. "They didn't wake up." Rex looked up again, eyes soft, steady. When she hesitated, he leaned closer, brushing his head against her knee. The judge blinked rapidly, removing his glasses. "You're doing wonderfully," he said, voice thick. "Take your time." The girl sniffed once, wiped her nose with the back of her hand, and smiled faintly. "Rex helped me," she said suddenly. The courtroom looked up. The judge tilted his head. "He did?" She nodded, looking down at the dog beside her. "He saved me twice," she said. "First, in the courtroom. Then, in the hospital. He stayed when I was scared. He didn't leave." Rex blinked, his gaze fixed on her face. as if understanding every word. The judge smiled gently. "He's quite a remarkable friend," he said softly. The girl nodded again. "He listens," she said, "even when I don't talk." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Thank you," she whispered. Rex stood then, as if to punctuate the moment. His tail gave one soft wag. The girl reached down, resting her hand gently on his head. The judge nodded toward Sam. "Detective," he said, "please make sure this young lady and her friend receive every honor our department can offer." Sam stepped forward, smiling. "Yes, sir," he said. "I think they've already earned it." As the judge called for recess, the room erupted into quiet applause. The sound wasn't loud. It was gentle, reverent, the kind of clapping meant for something sacred. Rex sat perfectly still beside the girl, gaze steady, as if he understood this wasn't a victory for him. It was hers. And for the first time since that terrible night, her voice filled the world again, not with fear, but with strength. The final day of the trial dawned calm and bright, a morning that felt like a breath held for too long, finally being released. The courthouse stood beneath a clear sky, its stone walls glowing softly in the early sun. No thunder today, no storm clouds, just light. Inside, the courtroom was filled to quiet capacity, faces familiar and new, officers, reporters, onlookers who had followed every headline since that fateful day. All gathered, waiting for the verdict. Even the air itself felt heavy with anticipation. At the front sat the girl, small but steady, her blue dress neat, her hands folded in her lap. Beside her, Rex lay at her feet, alert but relaxed. His chest rose and fell in slow rhythm. The tension that once lived in his muscles had softened. He was calm, ready. Detective Sam stood a few paces behind them, arms crossed loosely, trying to hide the mixture of pride and sadness in his face. He had seen countless trials before, but this one was different. This one mattered. The judge entered, his robes flowing softly behind him. The murmurs died instantly. He took his seat, removed his glasses, and looked over the courtroom with tired, kind eyes. "This court," he began, "has heard enough pain to last a lifetime. Today, we bring that pain to an end." His voice was calm, deliberate. He turned to the jury box. "Have you reached a verdict?" The foreman rose. "We have, Your Honor." A slip of paper was handed over. The judge unfolded it slowly, his gaze sweeping across the room, pausing briefly on the girl, then on Rex. When he spoke, his voice carried a gravity that silenced even the smallest shuffle of feet. "On the charge of aggravated assault and attempted homicide." A pause. A heartbeat. "The defendant is found guilty." A ripple moved through the courtroom. A release of tension. Quiet gasps. A few stifled sobs. Justice. The word didn't need to be spoken aloud. It was there, hanging in the air like a prayer answered. The judge struck his gavel once. "This court finds justice served," he said softly. And then, something remarkable happened. Something the courtroom had never seen before. Applause. Not loud, not wild, but gentle, reverent. It began with one pair of hands, then another, spreading softly through the room until even the walls seemed to hum with it. The sound was for her, the small girl who had survived, who had spoken, who had given courage to the truth itself. She turned to Rex, tears welling in her eyes. The dog lifted his head, meeting her gaze. His ears flicked forward, his expression calm and knowing. She bent down and wrapped her arms around him tightly, burying her face in his fur. Her voice trembled, but the words came clear. "You saved me, twice." Sam's eyes burned as he looked away. The judge pressed his lips together, pretending to study his papers. But the truth was written on every face in that room. Admiration, gratitude, awe. Rex remained still, letting her hold him, his tail brushing lightly against her dress. He understood, in the way only dogs do, that this was goodbye, not a sad one, but one full of meaning, full of everything words can't say. Moments later, the bailiff approached the judge with a quiet word. The judge nodded, then smiled toward the girl. "There's someone here to see you," he said kindly. The doors at the back opened. A couple stepped in, kind-faced, nervous, holding hands. The woman carried a small bag. The man had a gentle smile that seemed both unsure and full of hope. The girl's new foster family. Sam had told her earlier. They were good people. They'd been waiting for months, dreaming of a home with laughter again. And now, here they were, strangers who wanted to love her without asking anything in return. The girl hesitated for a moment. Still holding Rex's leash, she turned to face them. The woman knelt down, eyes soft. "Hi, sweetheart," she whispered. "You ready to come home?" The girl's fingers tightened around the leash. Her eyes flicked to Rex, to the friend who had guarded her through storms and silence. She knelt beside him one last time, pressing her forehead gently against his. "I'll miss you," she whispered. Rex blinked slowly, leaning forward until his nose brushed her cheek. He exhaled softly, a sigh that sounded almost human. Then he pulled back and sat tall, proud, as if standing at attention for a final salute. The judge rose from his bench and stepped down, something judges almost never did. The room fell quiet as he walked toward them. He stopped in front of Rex, sunlight catching the silver in his hair. He knelt carefully, one knee creaking under the weight of age, and reached out a trembling hand. "You did good, boy," he said, softly. His voice cracked on the last word. "You did real good." Rex didn't move at first. Then, after a heartbeat, he leaned forward and pressed his nose gently into the judge's palm. The old man smiled, eyes glistening. "You're dismissed, officer," he whispered. "You've done your duty." When the judge stood again, the applause came once more, quiet but full of emotion. It echoed like the closing notes of a song that no one wanted to end. Sam walked forward, clipping the leash gently back onto Rex's collar. "Come on, partner," he murmured. "Time to go home." The girl stood near her foster parents, watching. She wanted to run after him, to hold on longer, but she didn't. Somehow, she knew he would always be with her, even without words or leash or touch. "Another case closed," Sam said, smiling faintly. Rex looked up, ears perked as if listening for something distant. A breeze stirred the flags overhead. The weight that had lived in Sam's chest since the day of the trial seemed to lift, carried away by the wind. They started walking down the steps together, man and dog, shadows stretching long in the morning light. The city around them was waking up, The world, for now, was safe. And somewhere inside the courthouse, a little girl held her new mother's hand, her eyes bright, her heart steady, healed not by time, but by love that had no language. The morning air was crisp, washed clean by last night's rain. Sunlight spilled across the front lawn of the police headquarters, glinting off brass badges and polished shoes. Rows of chairs faced a small wooden stage, draped in blue and gold. Flags swayed gently in the breeze. It wasn't a grand event, just a modest ceremony for those who served. But for everyone present, this day felt like something sacred. Detective Sam adjusted his tie again, though it didn't need adjusting. His uniform was pressed sharp, his shoes clean enough to reflect the sky. Yet beneath his calm expression, something stirred. Pride, yes, but also a deep ache of farewell. He looked down beside him, and there sat Rex, posture perfect, gaze forward, fur gleaming in the light. The crowd's murmurs softened as the chief stepped up to the podium. "Today," he began, his voice steady but thick with emotion, "we honor a member of our force whose service reminded us all of what loyalty truly means." He paused, scanning the crowd. Officer Rex, a K-9 unit who acted not only with training, but with heart. A ripple of applause rose, soft, respectful. Cameras clicked. Reporters leaned forward. "They're calling him the dog who growled against death," the chief continued with a faint smile. "And I can't think of a title more fitting." The crowd laughed gently, though many blinked away tears. Sam placed a hand over Rex's shoulder, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing. The dog stayed motionless, head lifted, eyes fixed on the chief. Even here, surrounded by uniforms and ceremony, he was composed, a soldier through and through. "And we're not only celebrating a hero," the chief went on, "but also remembering what he saved. Because sometimes courage doesn't look like fighting. Sometimes it's standing your ground when the world doesn't understand what you're trying to say." Those words struck something in Sam. His gaze wandered across the crowd until it landed on the front row. There she was, the girl. When the chief called her name, she rose carefully from her seat. The crowd hushed. She walked slowly toward the stage, her small steps deliberate, her chin lifted just slightly. The medal at her chest caught the sunlight. The breeze lifted the hem of her dress. Every movement felt quiet but monumental, like the world itself had paused to honor her courage. Applause erupted again, but this time it felt different. Full, thunderous, unstoppable. The sound rolled across the courtyard, echoing off nearby buildings. Yet even in the noise, the true emotion wasn't in the clapping or the speeches. It was in the small things. In the quiet smile of a girl who had found her voice. In the steady calm of a dog who had found his peace. In the look they shared. One final glance across the space between them, filled with everything words could never hold. The crowd clapped again as photographers called for one last picture. The girl beside Rex, the chief, Sam, and a handful of officers behind them. The camera shutter clicked several times, freezing the moment forever. But the photo would never capture what truly mattered. The invisible thread between them. The echo of a growl that had once saved a life, and the love that grew from silence. As the crowd began to leave, Sam gave Rex's leash a gentle tug. "Come on, hero," he said softly. "We've got one more walk before we head home." Rex rose. movement smooth, almost regal. Sunlight traced a golden line down his back as he turned, paws quiet on the pavement. Behind him, the sound of applause faded into the distance. The girl watched him go, her small hand still resting over her heart. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. Some goodbyes are too full of gratitude to hurt. And as the camera pulled back, flags fluttering, sunlight flaring, the world seemed to hold still for one last beautiful moment. A brave dog, a healed child, and the quiet understanding that love, once found, never really leaves. The afternoon light was soft, golden, the kind that makes the world look gentler than it really is. The park stretched wide and green, the air filled with the laughter of children and the hum of summer. Trees swayed lazily beneath a forgiving sky. Somewhere, a fountain trickled steadily, its rhythm blending with the distant bark of dogs chasing after thrown sticks. Down the winding path, a woman walked slowly, her pace unhurried. Her steps carried the quiet grace of someone who had learned how to breathe again, after years of forgetting how. She wore a light scarf, her hair touched faintly with the sun. There was peace in her eyes, not the loud kind that shouts joy, but the kind that grows quietly, from survival. At her side trotted a small German shepherd pup, its oversized paws clumsy against the gravel path. The leash between them swayed in easy rhythm. Every few steps, the puppy would glance up at her, as if to make sure she was still there. She always was. The woman smiled down at him. "You're getting better at this," she murmured. Her voice was warm, filled with affection that came naturally, effortlessly. The pup wagged his tail in response, tongue lolling as he barked once, not loud, but eager, playful. They reached the edge of the park, where the path opened into a quiet meadow dotted with wildflowers. The breeze carried the scent of grass and rain. A few children ran past, laughing, chasing a red kite that danced high in the blue sky. The woman watched them for a moment, her expression softening. Her voice trembled slightly on that word, him. But the sadness that once lived there was gone. What remained was gratitude, memory, love that had grown roots instead of scars. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small metal tag, worn from years of being carried close. The engraved letters had faded, but they were still clear enough to read. Rex, K9. Unit 17, her thumb brushed over it. For a moment she could almost hear it again. The low growl that had once stopped time itself. The sound that had saved her life. That single warning that had spoken louder than any words could have. She smiled, tears gathering but never falling. The breeze caught her hair as she whispered, almost to the wind, "Hey, old friend." The puppy tilted his head, curious at the softness in her tone. She chuckled, wiping her eyes quickly. "Don't look at me like that," she teased. "You're not the jealous type, are you?" He barked once as if answering her challenge. She laughed again. That small, bright sound that had once been lost to silence. Then, slowly, she crouched down until they were eye to eye. The pup's tail wagged furiously, his whole body vibrating with joy. She placed her hand gently on top of his head, the same gesture a judge had once tried so long ago, the same gesture she had feared for years would bring back pain. But now, it brought peace to. Her fingers sank into the softness of his fur. "You need a name," she said quietly. Something strong. Something that means you'll always protect the people you love. The puppy tilted his head again, tongue out, waiting. Her smile deepened. Your name, she whispered, is Rex. The moment hung in the song, air. Simple, quiet, perfect. The pup barked once, sharp and bright, as if accepting the title with pride. She laughed softly through a tear that had finally escaped, brushing it away before it could fall. You approve? She asked. Voiceover. Sometimes, love doesn't need words. Sometimes, it just needs one growl to remind us that someone still cares. The breeze lifted the edge of her scarf as she closed her eyes, letting the sound of the park wash over her. Children's laughter, the rustle of leaves, the puppy's quiet breathing beside her. When she opened them again, she looked down at the little German shepherd now dozing peacefully against her leg. His fur shimmered gold beneath the sunset. She smiled, not the fleeting smile of relief, but the lasting one of peace. The kind that stays. The camera would pull back slowly now, capturing the wide park, the fading light, the two figures on the bench. One woman, one dog. Together, at the edge of day. Her hand rested gently on the pup's head, her eyes lifted toward the horizon. And as the music swelled softly, strings, maybe piano, the scene faded into gold. Fade out on the woman's smile. A smile that carried everything. The weight of loss, the quiet of healing, and the eternal echo of a love that never truly ended. Voiceover. Some stories stay with us not because of the drama, but because of the quiet truth inside them. Rex's story reminds us that love doesn't always come in words. Sometimes it comes in a loyal stare, a gentle paw, or a simple act of courage when we need it most. German shepherds have that rare gift. They don't just protect us, they understand us. They sense our fears, share our silence, and love us without conditions. If you've ever looked into your dog's eyes and felt they could almost read your heart, you already know what this story is about. There's a kind of magic in that bond, something that makes life softer and the world a little kinder. If you'd like to deepen that connection, there's a wonderful place I've found that helps you understand your dog on a more personal level. Not training, but understanding. I'll leave it here for you to explore, if your heart leads you there. Because in the end, loving a dog isn't about commands or tricks. It's about listening, the way Rex did, with patience, with trust, and with love that never lets go.